The Sex Which Is Not One, by Luce Irigaray is a key text in feminist philosophy and psychoanalytic theory, where she critiques traditional notions of sexuality and proposes a new understanding of female sexuality. Irigaray begins by critiquing the phallocentric nature of Western thought and language, which centers male experience and perspectives while marginalizing or ignoring female sexuality. She argues that traditional psychoanalytic and philosophical frameworks have been constructed around the idea of the male as the norm, with the female defined only in relation to the male. Irigaray challenges the notion that female sexuality is passive or lacks specificity. She posits that female sexuality is inherently multiple and fluid, not confined to a single form or function like male sexuality. This multiplicity is expressed in the metaphor of the two lips, suggesting an ongoing, dynamic interplay within female sexuality that defies linear, singular categorization. The title of the essay itself, The Sex Which Is Not One, signifies the idea that female sexuality cannot be reduced to a single, monolithic entity. Irigaray argues that women's sexual experiences and identities are diverse and cannot be fully understood or represented within a phallocentric framework that seeks to impose unity and sameness. Irigaray critically engages with the theories of Sigmund Freud and Jacques Lacan, particularly their views on female sexuality. She disputes Freud's idea of penis envy and Lacan's notion of the female subject as defined by lack, the lack of the phallus. Instead, she suggests that these theories reflect male anxieties and misconceptions about female sexuality rather than objective truths. A significant theme in Irigaray's work is the reclamation of female desire. She argues that traditional narratives have suppressed or distorted women's desires, presenting them as secondary to male desires. Irigaray calls for a recognition and validation of female desire in its own right, independent of male definitions and expectations. Irigaray emphasizes the centrality of the female body in understanding female sexuality. She critiques the ways in which women's bodies have been objectified and controlled by male-dominated discourses. By focusing on the lived experiences and sensations of women's bodies, Irigaray seeks to develop a more authentic and empowering account of female sexuality. The essay also explores the ways in which language and representation contribute to the marginalization of female sexuality. Irigaray argues that the symbolic order of language has been constructed to reflect and reinforce male dominance. She calls for the development of new forms of expression that can more accurately and fully represent women's experiences and desires. Irigaray introduces the concept of mimesis as a strategy for women to subvert phallocentric discourse. By mimicking and exaggerating the representations of femininity imposed by patriarchal culture, women can expose their artificiality and limitations. This performative approach allows women to challenge and destabilize dominant narratives about gender and sexuality. Irigaray advocates for a new ethics of sexual difference that recognizes and values the differences between men and women without reducing them to hierarchical oppositions. She envisions a relational ethics that respects the unique identities and experiences of women, fostering genuine dialogue and mutual understanding between the sexes. Irigaray calls for a radical rethinking of sexuality and gender that moves beyond phallocentric frameworks. She envisions a future where female sexuality is recognized in its multiplicity and fluidity, and where women are free to explore and express their desires without fear of marginalization or repression. This vision entails not only changes in theoretical perspectives but also transformations in cultural practices and social structures. The Sex Which Is Not One is a groundbreaking text that challenges deeply entrenched assumptions about sexuality and gender. Irigaray's critique of phallocentrism and her call for a new understanding of female sexuality have had a profound impact on feminist theory and continue to inspire discussions about the complexities of sexual difference.